If you've played video games for any length of time, you've seen a game over screen. Whether you ran out of lives, missed a crucial button prompt, or you're simply Dark Side Phil.
This is high quality content creation.
Sooner or later, every adventure comes to an embarrassing end. But as games become more ambitious, so did their failure rates. Some are so bizarre you have to go out of your way to trigger them. So this episode, we take a look at these confusing conclusions, these laughable losses, and these daft defeats. As I say. But hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt. Games with incredibly dark and insane game overs. Special thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Most browsers come pre-installed on your PC. You didn't choose them, they're just sort of there. They're perfectly adequate if all you ever do is click the odd link. But if you're anything like me, you'll spend the evening researching some obscure gaming mystery, only to emerge 4 hours later having somehow learned the entire history of Finnish joystick manufacturers instead. So, if you're spending that much time online, it makes sense to use a browser that's actually built for it. One of my favourite Opera GX features is the built-in ad blocker. Turn it on with a couple of clicks and suddenly all those websites plastered with enough flashing adverts to make a 1998 GeoCities page look tastefully restrained become much easier to read. It also includes a free built-in VPN, which helps conceal your IP address while you're browsing. Think of it as dropping a smoke grenade online. Not because you're planning anything sinister, but because a little bit of extra privacy never hurts. Then there's GX mods, and this is where Opera GX really starts showing off. Head into the GX store and you can completely customise the browser with wallpapers, colours, startup animations, sounds, fonts, sidebar icons, and even the icon sitting in your taskbar. Whether you want something retro, cyberpunk, or just wonderfully ridiculous, you can make Opera GX look like it belongs on your desktop instead of everyone else's. Better still, if one particular effect starts getting on your nerve, you can pop into the mods menu on the sidebar and switch individual parts on or off without throwing the whole thing out. If only Windows updates worked like that. And if the thought of changing browsers sounds like moving house, don't worry. Opera GX has a quick import tool that brings across your bookmarks, browsing history, cookies, and settings from your old browser in just a few clicks. It even supports your existing Chrome extensions, so you won't have to spend the afternoon trying to remember which website you bookmarked back in 2016 and you're definitely going to read later. Use my link below to download Opera GX today. It's right at the top of the description and in the pinned comment. If you're already spending hours exploring gaming history, strange internet rabbit holes and everything in between, you may as well browse with something that's actually designed for people who enjoy being online, rather than people who accidentally open the internet while looking for Excel. The definition of a sequel was considerably looser in the early 90s than it is today. Nowadays, we expect bigger, better and bolder whenever we see an incrementally higher number on the box, and share our disappointment online when it doesn't deliver. Back then, however, it wasn't uncommon for sequels to be little more than glorified mission packs, such as Doom 2, the Jilla Jungle games, heck, even the original Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 from a decade prior, now better known in the West as the Lost Levels counts. Another example is the subject of this entry, Commander Keen in the Invasion of the Vorticons, a game about an 8-year-old saving the galaxy from the titular alien invaders, which, fun fact, was partially based on an attempt at porting Super Mario Bros. 3 to the PC. Developed by id Software, The first episode of the Commander Keen series, Marooned on Mars, was released as a free download, with the following 2 episodes available for individual purchase. In the second of these episodes, entitled The Earth Explodes, Commander Keen's overarching objective is to destroy the 8 Tantalus ray cannons poised to destroy the planet. Alternatively, you can simply let curiosity win. If you instead hit a switch found next to any of these 8 cannons, the cannons immediately activate, with predictably fatal consequences for the planet. Props at least to id for allowing the player to do the exact opposite of their objective if their curiosity spans that far, and for demonstrating to the world that you probably shouldn't trust gamers of the 90s with giant planet-destroying cannons. And speaking of warnings to the curious, before a series of disappointing sequels and a criminally underrated 2024 remake, Alone in the Dark was a pioneer of survival horror, some even crediting it with inventing the genre. The first game from 1992 took inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos and saw you as either Private Gumshoe, Edward Carnby, or wealthy heiress Emily Hartwood, investigating a haunted mansion in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. And let's face it, Alone in the Dark wouldn't be the original survival horror game without a few crazy deaths to its name, some of which you have to be a bit of a sucker to get caught by. For example, inside the Deserto Manor's second floor library, poking around and solving a particular puzzle gives a player character access to a spooky little ritual chamber full of creepy paraphernalia. One such item the player can discover is a book entitled De Vermis Mysteriis. A scary book in a scary room, littered with scary artifacts, in a house belonging to a known Cthulhu worshipper? Reading it sounds like a bad idea, right? Well, if you choose to do so anyway, and aren't standing on the pentagram at the end of the room, the forbidden knowledge contained within the book is so powerful that it snaps your poor player's character's spine and kills them instantly. This isn't even the only book in the game that can harm you either. Oh no! Another book, entitled Fragments of the Book of Abdul, which genre-savvy players will recognise as another name for the Necronomicon, while not killing the player and ending their game entirely, does drive you to the brink of madness. Not a good way to go, death by learning far too much for a mortal mind to comprehend. We all know the old saying, curiosity killed the cat, but in this case, it seems curiosity killed the protagonist. The Zork franchise had its genesis in the land of the humble text adventure, the bookworm's genre of choice, if you will. Who needs graphics or pretty pictures where you could just read words on a screen and let your imagination do all the heavy lifting? By 1993, however, Infocom finally gave the series a long overdue upgrade with Return to Zork. It transitioned into a point-and-click adventure for MS-DOS and Mac, complete with gloriously cheesy 90s FMV sequences. Like many staples of the genre, Return to Zork is notoriously unfair. It is filled with soft locks, multiple ways to render your run unwinnable without even realising it until hours later. Take the late game comedy contest, for example. In true 90s fashion, the requirements to enter read like a playground rumour. If you fail to dig up a specific plant on the game's very first screen in one very specific way, you are barred from entry. Even then, you must track down several NPCs across the world to translate a random joke book you found near a statue. Fail to do so, and the club owner delivers the blunt verdict: it's game over for you. Yet this isn't even the strangest way to meet your end. Return to Zork famously weaponised its own copy protection as a lethal threat. The game manual was filled with lore snippets that you would be quizzed on twice throughout the campaign, in literal high-stakes pop quizzes. Fail either one, and you die. It is one thing to get detention for a bad grade, but imagine if the punishment for failing a test was literal death. Then again, knowing some of my old teachers, it doesn't seem entirely outside the realm of possibility. Hey, it's a New Zealand story. Not brought this up on Fact Hunt for a while. You may remember it from my offensive cheat codes episode, but for those unaware, let me divulge to your earboxes about this quirky little platformer. Developed by Taito of Puzzle Bobble / Buster Move, Chase HQ and Rainbow Islands fame, the New Zealand story is a game about a tiny yellow kiwi bird named Tiki, off to rescue his missus and his friends from a dastardly leopard seal, or walrus depending on your region. Gameplay-wise, it's a basic enough scrolling platformer where you navigate intricate stages and eradicate everything you encounter along the way. So, pretty standard stuff there. It also contains a secret ending that can be found in the arcade version and the god-awful 2026 remake under very specific conditions. I actually encountered this one in the wild while playing the arcade version on holiday as a kid. But it was so out there that nobody on the playground believed me. So who's a liar now, Tim Richards? Hey? Nah. Between worlds 3 and 5, if you lose your last life by being hit by an enemy's projectile, instead of dying the normal way, Tiki suddenly sprouts a halo and flies up to the sky to one of the 3 bonus stages, introduced by the on-screen text as "Welcome to Heaven." Now, this stage plays pretty much the same as any other. However, the catch is, the intended method of completing this level is to find a secret exit that could be used to skip to the next stage of the game from the one you died on and continue playing. If, however, you complete the level the usual way by simply progressing to the end, you get this text instead. Tiki met the goddess and went into a long sleep in the warm sunlight, but the heavens had an exit to the underworld. Poor Tiki. Under that text, you then get an image of Tiki's grieving girlfriend, still with a ball and chain around her ankle and weeping. Then it's game over, and you've lost your coin. Talk about dark. Not only did Tiki actually die, but if he doesn't find the way out, he explicitly left his girlfriend and kids bereaved. Pretty brutal for a cute little game about an incorrectly coloured kiwi. Ugh. Sports games are nearly as old as a medium of gaming itself. Ever since Tennis for Two arrived in 1958, followed by a wave of Atari classics, players have been content to trade physical exertion for digital competition. Clearly, we've been perfectly happy sitting on our couches playing simulated sports instead of breaking a sweat in the real world for a very long time. Take California Games, for example. Released in 1987, the title became a runaway hit by mashing up the sports genre with the quintessential culture of the late 80s. It was the "it runs doom" of its day. If a machine could output a video signal, it had California Games on it. And with events like skating, BMX, surfing, and who could forget hacky sack, it struck a chord with players everywhere. Such a massive success naturally warranted a follow-up, and indeed it did, with 1990's aptly named California Games 2 on MS-DOS. While it technically qualified as a sequel, as well it had a 2 at the end of it, it was essentially more of the same, and was a bit crap. Anyhow, California Games 2 actually holds the dubious distinction of being one of the few, if only sports games, where making a mistake can actually have fatal consequences for the player's character. Bad enough there's some particularly painful looking crashes in the hang glider round, but if you crashed at certain points on the skateboarding event, not only would you fail the level, but in some places you'll be treated to a shot of your skater smashing into the wall, complete with massive blood splatter. And then smash cut to a first-person shot of what is presumably your character's grave, surrounded by mourners, with your skateboard as a headstone, as a modified version of the funeral march plays. And just to add icing to the cake, the failure message for this particular game over reads, "Death, where is thy sting?" Game over, man! I understand that a modicum of realism is usually a sought-after feature in sports games, but they didn't really need to go as far as illustrating the grim consequences of ignoring safety gear. If anything, this experience has made me quite content to avoid these extreme sports in real life altogether, and just stick to waggling my joystick at home instead. I'll give it a go.